Hello friends, and welcome to my new video. With the current situation being the way it is, and the absolute horrors of war gripping the entire world, these are pretty bleak times that we are going through, very scary times that we are going through, very uncertain times that we are going through. And given that the times are the way they are, I was thinking of how futile and how useless each and every war has been over the decades, over the centuries. And apart from causing destruction, loss of human lives, and leaving behind permanent psychological scars in the minds of the survivors, very little has been achieved by war. So for today's episode, given the scenario around us all over the world, I thought of making a list of my favorite, my personal favorite war movies, or as I like to call them, anti-war movies, because no matter what is shown in the film, I think what we take out of the film is the message of the futility of war, of the uselessness of war, of absolutely nothing positive that comes out of a war. And I think most of the movies, whether they are projected as war movies or anti-war movies, most of the films in concern end up giving that same message. So I'll be giving you a list of 10 of my favorite films, which I like to classify as anti-war movies. And as always, it's a personal, subjective list. It's just my favorites. Doesn't mean that they're the greatest of all time, and some of the movies which you probably have in mind may not be here. Doesn't reflect anything excepting my personal choice. And as always, these lists are in no particular order, excepting the top 3, which are my top favorites. So without much ado, I will start talking about my list. And at number 10 is Paths of Glory, a 1957 film directed by the great Stanley Kubrick. Now, Paths of Glory is about this colonel who's quite a temperamental colonel, and he faces refusal from his French army for an almost suicidal act of capturing a German post. And they refuse to take his orders, following which there is a court-martial in which the colonel is defending his soldiers. The film made quite a stir, created quite a stir when it was released, and it was felt almost unilaterally that the French military, the French army, was not shown in very good light. And as far as I know, it was banned from screening in a lot of countries across Europe. And I think it was eventually nearly 20 years later, around 75 or 76, that the film did get theatrical release to some great acclaim, considered as one of the finer works of a celebrated director like Stanley Kubrick. Paths of Glory is a must-watch, according to me, for those who haven't seen it. It is at number 10 in my list. At number 9 in my list is another favorite. This was a book which was adapted into a movie. Always a difficult task, converting a book into cinema. And there are a very few examples where that conversion, that transformation is a great one. This one happens to be one of those. It's called All Quiet on the Western Front. And it's a classic book which I had read when I was around 17 or 18. And to read such a book at that age, it left a huge mark on my subconscious, on my conscious. And, I was very moved when I read that book. And eventually I saw the film much later. There are 2 or 3 versions of All Quiet on the Western Front, if I'm not mistaken. The one I'm talking about is the 1930 version, which is directed by Louis Milestone. And it's a film that represents the mental, physical, the mental stress, the physical discomfort, the emotional distress war causes to soldiers and to common people. And sometimes we forget that they are the same. The soldier is a human being at the end of it all. And All Quiet on the Western Front is told through the eyes of a young protagonist, and the loss of innocence, the loss of hope, the loss of almost everything positive that he suffers as he encounters this war is what this beautifully poignant film is about. It's a wonderful watch, had a great impact on me, as I said, because I sort of read the book in my teens. But even as a cinema, I think it stands up to the power and strength of the book. All Quiet on the Western Front, directed by Louis Milestone, is number 9 in my list. At number 8 in my list is the 1959 movie directed by Alain Resnais, and it's the gorgeous Hiroshima monomer. Essentially a love story between a Japanese artist and a French actress, and the friendship, the relationship that the two share is what forms the crux of the film. But what you cannot ignore is the backdrop of the war and the ultimate catastrophe caused by the atom bomb being dropped at Hiroshima, on Hiroshima, and which leads to some absolutely catastrophic consequences on the protagonists and the lead characters. It's a wonderful movie, Hiroshima monomer. Again, a much later viewing for me. I would have watched it around 10 or 12 years ago and was absolutely bowled by the brilliant poetry the movie had to offer. Hiroshima monomer is at number 8 in my list. At number 7 in my list is a movie which really needs no introduction when it comes to war movies or anti-war movies. And it's the tale of a brave man, Oskar Schindler, trying to protect hundreds and hundreds of Jews from the Holocaust, employing them in his factory, saving them from the German propagators. And what a beautiful movie. Gut-wrenching at times, harrowing, difficult to watch, but at the same time it fills you with positivity, it fills you with hope for human beings. And that's the brilliance of Steven Spielberg. I think it came out in the 90s, Schindler's List, and inordinately long movie which sort of ran for nearly 3 hours. It came out around 93, 94, but one of the best, not just one of the best war movies or anti-war movies as I like to call them, but perhaps one of the best cinemas ever made. Schindler's List by Steven Spielberg is at number 7 in my list. Talking of great directors tackling great themes brings me to my next list, which is at number 6, my next film, and that is La Grande Illusion, directed by the great Jean Reno. And this came out in 1937, and it's perhaps the single greatest anti-war statement made with the backdrop of World War I. It talks of class struggles of French soldiers and temperamentally difficult and different captains and colonels, and how they react and deal with their personal class struggles and their personal prejudices, but all the while trying to escape a German camp. And La Illusion Grande is, according to me, perhaps one of the greatest films made by the legendary filmmaker Jean Reno. And there's this funny anecdote, this funny interview which Renoir was asked about the influence powerful cinema have on society. And he said, not really, not much, none to be precise. And when he was asked to illustrate his point, he gave the example of La Illusion Grande, in La Grande Illusion, saying that it's perhaps one of the greatest anti-war statements I'd made in 1937, and it just took 2 years after that for the Second World War to start. So there lies your answer as to how much cinema can influence society. But whether it can or not is a different thing. But the fact remains that La Grande Illusion is perhaps one of the greatest films ever made. Definitely my most favorite film made by Jean Renoir. At number 5 is a film which I think is a movie which brings out the horrors, the psychological scars, the completely ravaged subconscious of soldiers coming back from the Vietnam War, and it is the brilliant, hard to watch, harrowing to watch, gut-wrenching to watch, The Deer Hunter. And from 1978, I think 1978 in fact gave us two very good films with the Vietnam War as a backdrop. Deer Hunter is the one I'm talking about, and it has performances by John Savage, Meryl Streep, Frederick Forrest, and Robert De Niro, of course, which elevates the film to an even greater height, and just makes us realize how useless really the war is. At one side are the bodies, the body counts which just keep increasing, and the other side are the survivors who are just as bad, who are just as scarred and just as hurt and ravaged emotionally and psychologically after having survived the horrors of war. And I don't think there has been a better depiction of that than The Deer Hunter. The Deer Hunter is at number 5 in my list. At number 4 is another movie which is made in the same year, as The Deer Hunter, 1978, and again has an interesting backdrop of the Vietnam War. And this is Hal Ashby's absolute classic and personal favorite, Coming Home, starring Bruce Dern, John Voight, and of course Jane Fonda. And it's a love story, it's a love triangle where Jane Fonda's partner is presumed missing and presumed dead in war, and she forms a relationship with another war veteran, another war survivor, John Voight. And just as their relationship is taking a new turn, Bruce Dern comes back to their lives with some heartbreaking consequences. Coming Home is a story of human emotions. It's a story of love and marriage and relationships, but the dynamics of these relationships are greatly altered and greatly influenced by the backdrop of the film, which is the Vietnam War and its effects on people fighting the war. Hence, the enormity of war, which is shown in Hal Ashby's film, is a little different from a direct result of war, but at the same time, it at almost every point tells you how human actions are controlled by their effects of war. A brilliant film, a huge personal favorite of mine. Coming Home is at number 4 for me. Now this leaves me with my top 3, my 3 most favorite movies, which I will rank in order. And it's not to negate the influence of any of the other films that I've spoken about so far, from number 10 to number 4. They are huge favorites of mine. But even amongst your favorites, you do have a few which are slightly more likable to you personally. And these are those 3 films. At number 3 is the 1985 film directed by L.M. Klimenov and Ellen Klimov, sorry, and it's called Come and See. It's a gut-wrenching tale of survival, redemption, and hope during the debris and destruction that war throws up at you. A young Russian soldier is forced to take up arms against the German aggressors, and he meets a woman there and decides to come back to his village. And when he does come back to his village, he finds out that the entire village, his entire family, has been massacred. And how he tries to rebuild his life, in these absolutely trying circumstances and these absolutely hopeless scenarios, is what Come and See is about. It can be very hard to watch at times. It can be very, very emotional to see at times. But make no mistake, it is one of the best films made on war and the futilities of war. It's a must-watch, a great movie directed by Ellen Klimov, and don't miss it. It's a fabulous movie. It's there on YouTube to see. In fact, I'll tell you, most of these movies are either available on YouTube or on DVDs. At least in India, I have not seen too many of these movies, barring the common ones like Schindler's List, on OTTs. So you'll have to rely on YouTube or DVD collections or some of your friends maybe, if you don't have it, to watch these movies. But do try and watch them if this is a genre that interests you, because there are some absolute gems in this movie, in this genre. So at number 3 was Come and See, the 1985 movie directed by Ellen Klimov. And now I come to number 2, which is the 1979 classic directed by Francis Ford Coppola, Apocalypse Now. The story of Captain Benjamin Willard and his hunt in the forests of Cambodia for the colonel gone rogue, Walter Curtis, hiding in the forest with a few native people. It's definitely the most hard-hitting, the most difficult to watch, the most traumatic war movies or anti-war messages that I have seen on screen. And what might come as a huge shock or surprise to most of you, to me, the collaboration of Francis Ford Coppola and Marlon Brando has given me the best film, which is Apocalypse Now, Godfather included. To me, they've not bettered Apocalypse Now ever. I think, to me, it's Brando's best performance ever, as is Francis Ford Coppola's best movie ever. Personal choices again, but that's what it is. It's absolutely superb. Great performances by Robert Duvall and Frederick Forrest and Martin Sheen, of course, but try topping the deadpan Brando when he says, "You have the right to kill me. You have every right to do that, but you have no right to judge me." Try and better that. It rarely gets bettered in cinema. One of my all-time favorite anti-war movies, at number 2, is Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now. Now that leaves me with my number 1 movie, which I will share with you. But I'd like to make mention of a couple of movies which I have not included in this list, and there are reasons why I haven't included in this list. One is, of course, an obvious choice, which is my favorite movie of all time, or whenever I am asked to rank and put down my 10 favorites or 20 favorites, it's usually there at number 1. And it has a strong backdrop of World War, and that is Casablanca. And although war is such an important aspect in Casablanca, and like movies like Coming Home and Deer Hunter, the effects of war on the protagonist, on the characters, are so strong and so undeniably relevant, I decided to keep Casablanca out of the list because to me simply it is still the greatest love story, and I didn't want it to be part of a war movie list. It's a personal quirk, you can say, or it's a personal oddity, but I didn't want Casablanca in this list of mine for that very reason. There is another movie which is not a feature film, it's a short film made by the most unlikeliest of directors when you think of cinema on war. And yet it is so evocative, it is so loud, it is so strong through its gentle, humane and quite literally childlike treatment that we often forget that it's perhaps one of the most powerful anti-war statements seen on screen. And the movie I'm talking about is a short film called Two, directed by the great Satyajit Ray. And very honestly, Two slipped my mind when I was thinking of this list, because I was looking at conventional feature films and movies which really had war as a very looming and larger than life presence in the movies. And it was a friend of mine who asked me if I had Two in my list, and it got me thinking that yes, of course, Two is such a powerful statement against war, and done so brilliantly. Only someone like Satyajit Ray had the aesthetics, had the sensibilities to make it the way he did. So yes, Two and Casablanca, these will be, if you call, honorable mentions. They are very noteworthy mentions in this list of mine of anti-war movies. And that leaves me with my final movie for the list, my number one movie for the list, which is undoubtedly my most favorite, my personal favorite anti-war movie. And it's directed by Mikhail Kalatozov. It's a 1957 movie called The Cranes Are Flying. The devastation of war, the loss of love and life, the separation from loved ones, the pain and anguish in waiting for the loved ones to return back have never been as beautifully described and depicted as it has been in The Cranes Are Flying. Shot in black and white with some absolutely marvelous and gorgeous cinematography. It's poetic in its depiction of this young girl who loses her boyfriend to the Second World War, and then waits for his return, hopelessly, and how life goes on, how life has to move on despite such personal tragedies and losses, is what The Cranes Are Flying is all about. If there could be a poetry on screen about the horrors of war, about the futilities of war and the uselessness of war, there couldn't have been a better poetry written, a better poem written than The Cranes Are Flying. It's got to be my favorite anti-war movie, without a doubt. Cranes Are Flying is available on YouTube. I've seen it there. It's a Russian movie, but it has very apt and proper English subtitles. Apocalypse Now is available on video. Come and See is also available on YouTube. And the other movies, especially the more famous one like The Paths of Glory and Deer Hunter and All Quiet on the Western Front, Schindler's List, are available on some OTTs. Just keep hunting for them, or get hold of the videos, the DVDs, which are quite easily available. So I hope you do watch some of the movies mentioned here in my list. I do wish and hope that the message people like John Lennon gave us decades ago war is over if you want it. We all really want it, and I hope that has the power to end this current war and this current crisis that the world is facing together. It's terribly sad, and it feels very frustratingly helpless when citizens of the world all over just sit and discuss and wonder what role we can play to end such atrocities. Really don't have an answer to that, but the fact remains that a lot of us feel very strongly about it, and maybe it's time that some action, some concrete, some result yielding actions possibly could be taken by some of us. I'll leave you at this point of this episode just mulling over the 10 movies I spoke to you about. Do try and watch them if you haven't, and let me know in the comments section if there are some favorite anti-war movies of you which I have not included in my list. Maybe I have not seen them, and I will definitely make it a point to see them. That's all for this episode, and until the next time, bye for now and stay safe. Love to all.